Hey guys, I'm back from my training op, and I have a lot of really interesting stories to share with you. I've got enough to the point where I'm going to break them up into two parts, this being the first. I'd love to put them all into one entry, but I haven't had the chance to write them all down yet. I didn't have anything too crazy happen while I was out there, although we did have one incident with a rookie that I found relevant. Since I'm sure that you guys have been waiting for these, I'll just get right into the stories. I'll assign each batch of stories to a person that told them to me. KD. KD is a vet who's been a SAW officer for about 15 years. She specializes in high elevation mountain rescues and is widely considered one of the best in her field. She was one of the more enthusiastic storytellers, to say the least, and since we were together for a fair amount of time during exercises, she ended up telling me about 4 that really stuck with me, actually. The first she told me, in response to me asking about her most traumatic calls. She shook her head and told me that really bad calls happen more frequently on the mountain, since the potential for nasty accidents are higher. About 5 years ago, one of the parks that she worked at had a string of disappearances. It was a bad year, she said. One of the worst on record as far as weather went. They were getting about a foot of new snow every couple of days, and there was a few avalanches that killed some climbers. They'd warned people about staying on the mapped areas, but of course, there's always those who don't listen. In one particularly nasty case, an entire family got wiped out because the father decided that he knew better than the officials, and he took them out into an area that just wasn't safe. They were snowshoeing, and as best KD could figure, they walked onto a shelf of snow that looked solid, but actually wasn't. It gave way, and this family went ass over tea kettle, almost 300 feet down a slope. They landed on rocks at the bottom. The parents died instantly. One of the kids did as well, but the other 2 survived. One had a broken leg and fractured ribs, and another was almost unharmed, save for some bruising and a sprained ankle. The uninjured child left his sibling behind to set out to find help. Katie said the kid didn't make it more than half a mile before the storm overtook him. Kid stopped to try to get warm, or maybe just to rest, and ended up freezing to death. They ended up finding the family with the help of some witnesses who saw them heading out into the wilderness. And she was the one who found the kid who'd frozen to death looking for help. She said it started to snow just enough to obscure long-distance vision, but not enough to make searching impossible. She saw a figure sitting in the snow up ahead. She got to it as quickly as possible. She described in detail how, as she got closer, she realized first that it was a child, second that they were deceased, and third, that they had frozen in one of the most pitiful positions she'd ever found a corpse in. The kid was sitting upright, his knees tucked against his chest, his arms were curled around him, and his head was tucked up into his coat. When she moved the coat to find his face, she saw that he died crying. His face was twisted, and the tears were frozen on his cheek. She said that it was painfully obvious that the kid was terrified when he succumbed to hypothermia, and as a mother, it just broke her heart. She told me repeatedly that she hopes the father is burning in hell as we speak. The other traumatic story that she told me that stood out, in my mind anyway, was the one that happened when she was a rookie. Her team got a report of an experienced climber who hadn't come home the previous day. His wife was convinced that something bad had happened because he'd never failed to come home on time. They went out looking for him, and had to climb what sounded like some very technical, challenging parts of the mountain. They got to a relatively flat area, and KD started seeing blood in the snow. She followed the trail, and as she went, she started seeing little bits of tissue. She wasn't sure exactly what body part it had come from, but the further she followed it, the more there was. She follows this blood and tissue trail to a sheltered area under a cliff face, and she finds the climber. She said that there was so much blood, more than she had ever seen before. He was lying down, one arm stretched out in front of him, as if he would died crawling. She looks closer, and she sees that he's been partially disemboweled, which is where the tissue that she had seen would come from. The guy had an ice pick tucked in his hip holster. It was covered in blood. Of course, they'll never be sure exactly what happened, but she said that, at best as she can figure, this is what went down. The guy had been attempting to climb the next area, and had been using his ice axe to ascend. He probably had a loose patch and had fallen. On his way down, or possibly when he landed, he had gotten impaled by the axe, and it had disemboweled him. He drug himself along, tearing pieces of himself out as he went, and had died under the cliff face. She isn't terribly bothered by gore, but I guess a few of those guys who came to help her remove the body threw up when they turned him over, and a good portion of his intestines spilled out. I mentioned to her that I was interested in hearing about any experiences she had with people completely disappearing. Her eyes light up, and she leans in close to me. "Want to hear a real doozy?" she asks. She tells me about how, when she first started, there was a case that got a lot of attention in the media. A family had been out berry picking in an area of the forest, very close to the entrance of a park. There had been 2 little boys, both under the age of 5, and at some point during the day, one of them had vanished. There's an absolutely massive search. They find absolutely nothing. It's another one of those cases where it's like the kid was never even there in the first place. The dogs just sit down and don't pick up anything. No trace of the kid is found. The search goes on for about 2 months, but is eventually called off. Fast forward to 6 months later, and the family comes back to place flowers at a memorial that's been set up around there for the kid. They bring their other son, and while they're placing the flowers, they lose sight of the kid for about 3 seconds, and in that span of time, he vanishes into thin air. Now, obviously, the parents are beyond devastated. It's awful enough to lose 1 child, but to lose 2 is beyond imagining. The search is huge, one of the largest in state history. There's about 300 volunteers coming every inch of this park, looking for the kid. But again, there's no trace of him. The search goes on for about a week, with people looking for miles from the part of the park that he vanished from. Then, almost 2 weeks later, a volunteer almost 15 miles from the designated search area radios in that he's found the kid. They assumed that the kid was dead, but the volunteer said that he's not only alive, but he's in good shape. Katie and her team go to recover the kid, and when they get there, she can't believe that this kid has been missing. His clothes are clean, there's no dirt on him anywhere, and he doesn't appear traumatized. The volunteer says that she found the kid sitting on a log, playing with a little twig bundle that's bound together with some old rope. Katie asks where he's been, and who he's been with for the past 2 weeks, and the kid tells her that he's been with the Fuzzy Man. Now, Katie firmly believes in Bigfoot, so she gets all excited and asks what he means by fuzzy. Was he hairy? But the kid says no, he wasn't hairy, he was a fuzzy man, as he describes a man that's blurry. Like when you go to close your eyes, but not all the way closed. He says that the man came out of the trees and took the kid with him deep into the woods. The kid says that he slept in a hollow tree, and the fuzzy man gave him berries to eat. Katie asks if the man was mean, or if he scared the kid, and the kid says, "No, he wasn't scary, but I didn't like how he didn't have any eyes." Katie says that they had to get the kid back to headquarters, and the cop takes him downtown to talk to him more about what happened. She finds the cop and talks to him. She said that the kid described being kept in this tree by the fuzzy man, and given berries whenever he was hungry. He was allowed to wander around a very specific clearing, but when he tried to go further, the fuzzy man would get mad and yell real loud even though he didn't have a mouth. When the kid got scared at night, the fuzzy man made it go brighter, and gave him the twig bundle. He said that the fuzzy man was going to keep him, but he had to let him go because the kid wasn't the right kid. He either can't or won't elaborate more on that. The cops are just sort of left scratching their heads in this case, and the search for his brother is renewed with no results. The kid has no idea where his brother might be, and they never find him. Alright, so for the last story that Katie told me, this was something that happened to her when she got separated from her training group when she was a rookie. They were learning the basics of high elevation, bay landing on well-mapped side of the mountain, and she had to use the bathroom. She went off about 50 yards from the group during a meal break and did her business. I'll tell the rest exactly as she told it to me. So, I go take a piss, and once I'm done, I start going back to the group, but I've only got about 5 feet when I realize that I have no idea where I am. And this wasn't a, "oh, I got turned around" lost. I mean, I literally had no fucking clue where I was. If you'd asked me, I don't even think I'd be able to tell you what state I were in. It was sort of how I imagine people with amnesia feel, you know? You're completely lost, and You have no idea what to do. So I stood there for a while, just trying to figure out where the fuck I was and what I was supposed to do, but the longer that I stand there, the more confused and turned around that I get, so I just start walking. As I recall, I just picked a random direction and went for it. And as I'm walking, I just start getting this feeling worse and worse, to the point where I have no concept of why I'm on the mountain in the first place. I'm just trudging through the snow, and then I start hearing this voice. It's kind of inside my head, almost. Like if a frog could talk, all low and croaky. And it's telling me over and over, "It's okay. It's okay. You just need to find something to eat. Find something to eat and you'll be okay. Just keep walking and find something to eat. Eat. Eat." So I start looking around for anything that I can eat, and I swear to God, I've never felt that hungry in my whole life. It was bottomless, and I think I've eaten just about anything you put in front of me right then. I had no concept of time. I had no idea how long I'd been out when I heard an actual voice coming towards me. I go toward it and I see it's one of the other S.A.Rs, and he's looking fucking terrified. He's running toward me asking if I'm okay and what the hell I'm doing out here. And the scary thing was, as he was running towards me, I kind of see myself reaching into my belt for my hunting knife. I'm not even really thinking about what I'm doing or what, but what I'm thinking is that I have to eat. And if I don't eat, I'll never be okay again. So I just have to eat. He sees me going for that and he backs off right away. He yells at me to put my knife away, that he's not gonna hurt me. And that kind of snaps me back. All of a sudden, I know exactly where I am, and I put the knife away. I run to him and ask how long I've been gone, thinking he'll tell me I've been gone for half an hour or so, but he tells me that I've been gone for 2 fucking days. I've gone over 2 peaks and ended up almost on the other side of the mountain, and if I kept going, I would have ended up wandering about 300 miles of wilderness. They'd never have been able to find me. He can't believe I'm not dead, and of course, I don't know what the fuck to think. I mean, to me, no time has passed at all. I don't say anything. I just go back with him to the rendezvous point, and I'm taken back to HQ to be airlifted to the hospital. When I get there, they do all kinds of tests to try to figure out what happened. As best as they can guess, I had some kind of weird vague state, which kind of is like amnesia, or it's some weird seizure that knocked my brain all out of whack. But the truth is that we really don't know. It's never happened again, but I'll tell you, ever since then, I've never gone out there alone. People rag on me for coming to them when I need to leave the group, but I just tell them that listening to me piss in the snow is better than losing me for 2 fucking days on a freezing mountain. EW. The next person that I talked to was EW, a former trainer who worked as an EMT. He still comes to ops like this to help out, but doesn't work full-time for us anymore. He specializes in finding lost kids, and he just seems to have a sixth sense for when it comes to knowing where they've gone. He's a legend amongst the more senior vets. He gets embarrassed if you compliment him on his work, though. He sat down with me at dinner one evening. We ended up swapping stories. One of them was casual, but when we got on the subject of more of our weirder calls, I mentioned that I had a buddy who'd gone up for a set of stairs. He got kinda quiet and asked me if I heard of a little boy who disappeared from his park a few years back. I hadn't, so he told me the story. They're out looking for this 11-year-old boy, Joey, who had gone missing near a river. Of course, the first thought was that he had fallen in and drowned, but when they sent the dogs out, they led the S.A.R officers away from the river and up into a very densely forested area. When we do searches for people, we typically search in like a grid pattern, and we search every box of the grid incredibly thoroughly. What EW's team noticed right away was that there was a very strange pattern was emerging. Dogs in alternating boxes were picking up Joey's scent, but losing it when they overlapped with another box. If you think of a checkered board, Joey's scent was being picked up in random black squares, but never in the red ones. This, of course, didn't make any sense, because how could the kid bounce from area to area without leaving a scent in each place that he passed? EW and his partner pass into a new box of the grid, and EW notices that there's a set of stairs about 50 yards away. He tells his partner that they need to go back and check near it, but his partner just flat out refuses. He tells EW that he's made it a point to never go near any stairs that he sees, and while it may be routine, he's not going to pretend that it's normal. He tells EW that he'll wait in sight while EW checks. EW says that he was irritated, but he felt for the guy and didn't push him on the subject. I walk over towards the stairs. They were small, kind of like the stairs in a basement. I don't really feel strongly one way or the other about them. The stairs, I mean, so I wasn't scared or anything. I guess I'm like everyone else. I just prefer not to think about them too much. Anyway, I went over and I could see that there was something lying at the bottom step, sort of curled up. My heart sinks because, of course, you always hope for the best. And we were confident that we'd find this kid alive because he'd only been missing for a few hours. But I knew right away that it was him, and that he was dead. He was curled up in a little ball on the step, holding his stomach. It looked like he'd been in horrible pain when he died. But I didn't see any blood, except for some near his lips and chin. I radioed in that I found him. We quickly got his body back to command. That poor family. They were devastated. The parents couldn't understand how he'd be dead, because he'd only been gone for a short amount of time. And on top of that, we didn't have any obvious cause of death, which made it worse. I figured he'd probably been eating something poisonous, since he was holding his stomach when I found him, but I didn't want to guess. It's hard enough to hear that your kid is dead, let alone that some stupid S.A.R guy is guessing about what had happened. They took him away, and I went home and tried not to think about it. I hate finding dead kids, man. I love this job, but it's one of the reasons that I left. I got 2 daughters, you know, and the thought of losing them always just... He was choked up a little here. I'm not great with emotional stuff like that, and it's always sort of awkward to see a grown man cry, so I didn't really know what to do. He pulled himself together eventually, though, and he kept going. Sorry. Anyway, we don't always hear back from the coroners about the cause of death. It's not really our job to know, I guess. And sometimes, if they think it's foul play, they won't tell us because of legal bullshit or whatever. But I've got a friend who works for the sheriff's department, and he'll usually pass along any interesting info if I ask anyway. In this case, though, I actually got a call from him about a week later. He asked if I remember the kid, and, well, of course I do. He says there was some seriously weird shit going on. He tells me, EW, man, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but the coroner has no idea what happened to this kid. He's never seen anything like it. My friend goes on to tell me that when the coroner opens up the kid, he couldn't even believe what he was seeing. The kid's organs were like Swiss cheese. Quarter-sized holes were punched clean through about every single organ this kid had. Aside from his heart and lungs, of course. But his colon, his stomach, his kidneys, even his testicles were full of these clean holes. My friend said that the coroner described it as if someone had taken a hole punch and punched holes out of everything. They were so neat. But the kid didn't have a scratch on him. No entry or exit wounds. The closest anyone's ever seen was a guy who'd fill himself full of buckshot a year or so back while cleaning out his rifle. No one had a clue what could have possibly caused it. My friend asked me if I had ever heard anything like it, or if we had similar cases in the past, but I'd never even heard of something like that. I told him that I wasn't going to be of any help to him. As far as I know, the coroner determined the cause of death as something like massive internal bleeding, but no one knows what really happened. I've never been able to forget that kid. I've had nightmares about it sometimes. I don't even let my kids go into the woods alone, and when we go together, I never let them out of my sight. I used to love it here, but that case and a couple of others just sort of ruined it for me. Dinner was over, so we started to clean up and go back to our cabins. Before we went our separate ways, he put his hand on my shoulder and looked at me really close. He tells me that there's bad things out there. Things that don't care if we have families or lives, or that we can think and feel. He tells me to be careful, and he walks away. I didn't get a chance to talk with him again, but that story really stuck with me. PB. Alright, so by pure coincidence, I got to talk to another vet, PB, who's been a S.A.R. in the field for a few years now. We were partnered on a grid sweep during a training exercise, and we were chatting casually about how we like the job, what kinds of things we've seen, and, the like. At one point, we passed an old set of stairs, though these were probably from an old fire lookout, given that the area that we were in. I sort of casually mentioned that I was curious about the stairs, and that I wished that I knew more about them. He got kind of quiet, looked at me like he wanted to tell me something, but wasn't sure if he should. Finally, he told me to turn my radio off. Obviously, this is something we're never, ever supposed to do, but I did it, and he did the same. So, about 7 years ago, he tells me, he was out in a car with a rookie. They're in an area of the park that had a lot of strange reports and events. Disappearances, stories about lights in the forest, odd noises, things like that. The rookie was being totally spooked. Kept going on and on about things out in the woods, according to PB. Yeah, the guy wouldn't stop talking about the goat man, just on and on. Goat man this, and a goat man that. Finally, I told him that there was plenty else to be afraid of out here that was very real, and that he'd better get over this thing with the goat man. The rookie wanted to know what kinds of things I was talking about, and I just told him to shut up and walk. He crests this little ridge, and there was a staircase about 10 yards ahead. The rookie stops dead in his tracks and just stands there and looks at him. I tell him, "See? That's something you should be afraid of." The rookie asks me what the hell these are doing out here, and for some reason, I just open up and tell him the truth, or what I've been told is the truth. I could have gotten in a lot of trouble for doing what I did, and I could get in a lot of trouble for repeating it to you. But you're a nice kid, and I want you to stop looking into this. Quit while you're ahead. So I'll tell you what I know. Under the condition that you never breathe a word of this to the soups. I told him that I wouldn't say a word, and he double checks that our radios are off. When I first started out, we were a little less tight-lipped about them, and other things that happened out here. We warned people before they were even hired that there was weird shit going on. I guess the Forest Service was tired of having such a massive turnover rate, and they wanted people to know what they were getting into. So, they started having people sign these agreements that they wouldn't go to the media about what was going on. The FS didn't want to scare people away. See, the last thing they needed was a bunch of spooked rookies running off to the media with stories of ghosts and haunted stairs. But eventually, they found out the agreements weren't even necessary. People not only didn't want to talk about what they saw, but they wouldn't. A few times, media tried to talk to people when kids or hikers would disappear, and no one would say a word. I can't really explain it. I guess we was just... I don't want to admit anything was wrong. I mean, this is our job, to be out into the woods every single day. We don't need to be spooked, and the best way to avoid it is to pretend that everything is okay. So, I'll tell you everything that I can think of, and after that, I'm done talking about this for good. And I expect you not to bring this up around me. Ever. The stairs have been out here for as long as the parks have existed. We have records going back decades describing them. Sometimes people go up them, nothing happens. Other times... Look, I really don't like talking about this. But sometimes really bad shit happens. I saw one guy get his hand clean sliced off when he got to the top. He reached out to touch a tree branch, and it happened so fast. 1 second his hand was there, and the next it was gone. Completely clean wound. We didn't find his hand, and the guy almost died. Another time, a woman reached the top of the stairs, and a blood vessel in her brain exploded. Literally exploded like a water balloon. She sort of stumbled down, came over to me, and all I got out was, I think something's wrong with me. And she dropped like a sack of flour, dead before she even hit the ground. I'll never forget the way the blood leaked out of the inside of her eye. Before she died, I watched it turn red. I watched it happen. There wasn't a single thing that I could even do to help. We warn people not to go anywhere near them, but there's always at least one idiot who does. And even if nothing happens to him, something bad always happens. Kids go missing on the trail, someone dies the next day, cut in half, in a completely safe part of the park. I don't know why, but something bad always happens. I don't know exactly why they're out here, and it doesn't matter. They're here, and if we're smart, we'll tell our new officers exactly what they're capable of. We were both quiet for a little while. I was afraid to talk because I wasn't sure if he was done. He looked like he wanted to say something else. And then he finally spoke up again. Have you ever noticed how you can't find the same ones twice? I nodded, expecting him to continue, but he just stayed quiet, walking alongside me. Eventually, he started a story about the biggest deer he'd ever seen in the park. I didn't bring up the subject again, and I didn't press him for any more stories. He dropped out of the op the next day. Apparently, he left before the sun came up. He said he was sick. None of us have heard from him since he left. Alright, I'm gonna stop here for the time being. I'll try to post the next part in the up-and-coming days, but with what it being the end of summer, things are getting pretty busy around here, actually. Thanks for the continued interest, guys. You've really awakened this curiosity in me that I didn't even know that I had. Anyway, signing out, and I'll see you guys next time.